of nations might perhaps, in spite of the fact that impartial reason, proper to the presence of all three-brained beings who have already attained responsible age, is absent in them, also achieve positive results in the fundamental aim they have set themselves, if they occupy themselves with solving and actualizing only those questions which are in the sphere of their competence and powers. Knowing their, so to say, ways, I am quite sure that they will not occupy themselves with those questions which are within the reach of their understanding. They would like to do, and really do, everything in such a direction that these processes of reciprocal destruction should cease immediately and forever. If indeed, with all their being, they were aware of the whole objective terror of these processes, and desired sincerely, jointly, to eradicate this evil from the surface of their planet, then they would willy-nilly penetrate into the essence of this question, and would understand that such an inherency which had become fixed in their psyche during hundreds of centuries can never be decrystallized in the course of a few decades. If they understand this, they would not attempt to decide or to actualize anything in this respect for the welfare of their contemporaries, but would direct and use all their attention, all their powers, and all their possibilities, having only the beings of future generations in view. For instance, if instead of wiseacring now, and as is still said there, Don Quixoting, with the aim of immediately attaining the total cessation of these processes of theirs, they were to occupy themselves with the eradication of the conviction, which had become fixed in their ordinary process of existence, of the virtues of two notions they have, that is to say, if they would try to attain the abolition of the practice of exalting certain of the participants in these processes to what are called heroes, and to reward them with honors and what are called orders, and also if they would try to attain the abolition even of one of their illustrious sciences from among their many Hasnamussian sciences, invented by certain pimpled beings among them, in which it is nonchalantly proved that the periodic reciprocal destruction on the earth is very, very necessary, and that if it did not exist, an intolerable overpopulation would result on the earth, and such economic horrors would ensue that men beings would begin to eat one another. If they would attain the abolition of these two practices, which have already become firmly fixed in the process of their abnormal ordinary being existence, then, thanks to the abolition of the first, they would eradicate forever the greater part of those automatic factors which make the psyche of the growing generation also predisposed to be subject to that special property, on account of which they always fall into that state into which it has already become without fail habitual for them to fall during these processes. And thanks to the second, they would help towards this, that there might not reach to the beings of future times at least one of those idiotic ideas from the number of already without this sufficiently numerous similar ideas constantly arising there, which are transmitted from generation to generation as something lawful and indubitable, and which altogether are partly the cause of the formation in their presences of those properties, not one of which is becoming to three-centered beings of our great megalocosmos, and among the number of which there belongs also that property inherent in them alone, which engenders in them even doubt in the existence of divinity. And owing chiefly to this doubt, there has almost entirely disappeared from their common presences the possibility of the precipitation of those data which should without fail be precipitated in the presences of all three-brain beings, the totality of which data engenders in them the impulse called the instinctive sensing of those certain cosmic truths which are always felt even by all one-centered and two-centered beings, wherever they might breed in the whole of the universe. But the misfortune for all other ordinary favorites of yours is that these power-possessing and important beings, assembled from the whole of the planet, do not begin to occupy themselves with these questions, considering them to be beneath their dignity. What next? Such important members of such important societies suddenly occupying themselves with such trivial matters? In general, in consequence of the fact that every kind of data for individual manifestation have already quite ceased to be crystallized in most of these three-brained beings who have taken your fancy, particularly the contemporary ones, and they manifest themselves only according to the dictates of the consequences of the properties of the organ Kundabuffer. They therefore do not like to occupy themselves with such affairs which are within their reason and within their power, but occupy themselves always with decisions of such questions which are incomparably higher than their reason. Thanks to this feature of their strange psyche, one other peculiar and in the highest degree strange psychic organic need had been formed in them during the last 20 centuries. The chief manifestation of just this psychic organic need of theirs consists in this, that each of them must always of necessity, as they say, teach others sense, or put them on the right road. Do you know, my boy, my mentioning this exceptional feature of their character, inherent in all of them without exception, leads me to the thought of the desirableness of explaining to you at this point about their strange psyche, and to give you the advice, like that which that good old fellow, our Ahun, already once gave you, when I ended my explanation about the contemporary terrestrial illustrious art. He then said, among other things, that if for some reason or other you happen to exist there on the planet Earth, and to mix with these strange three-brained beings, then you must always be very careful with those contemporary types there who are called representatives of art, and never offend them, and thus not make violent enemies among them. At that time, our dear Ahum, bearing in mind their numerous weaknesses, such as their self-love, pride, vanity, and still many others, indicated to you in which cases just which of these specific properties of theirs it was necessary, as he expressed it, to tickle. He even then explained to you in detail about what and how it was necessary to speak to them, so that they should always have good relations with you, and so that they should always and everywhere praise you and only speak good about you. Concerning this advice of his, I can say nothing bad. It cannot be denied it is ideal for the types he mentioned. These contemporary representatives of art there, in fact, have in great abundance the specific properties enumerated by our dear Ahun, and if on each occasion you tickle these particular properties of theirs, they will indeed worship you, and in everything always behave towards you not worse than those who were called their Asclean slaves. But though this advice of his is excellent, and even indispensable for existence among them, I personally do